In recent weeks, Republican town halls have turned into public forums for voter outrage, especially over the so-called Big Beautiful Bill that many GOP representatives such as Ashley Hinson of Iowa and Mike Flood of Nebraska proudly voted for, only to be confronted by constituents who are no longer willing to tolerate what they see as blatant betrayal.
Just watched a snippet from Republican Ashley Hinson's town hall. She represents Iowa's 2nd congressional district, which is a very deep red district, by the way, that she won comfortably by double digits. But fast forward to today, and it's obvious that her constituents aren't very happy with her since she just voted to give tax cuts to the rich at their expense. And I'm not sure what she was expecting when she said she voted for the big, beautiful bill, but if she was expecting applause, she is delusional. But I mean, this is emblematic of how all of these GOP town halls have been going. They show up, they get reamed, then they complain about it, and then they leave. But what do you expect? Like, you are destroying the lives of your constituents and letting Donald Trump ruin our country. So, of course, when you show up and your constituents have the opportunity to confront you, they're not going to be very happy. Hence why these are happening a lot less frequently. But credit to Ashley, she showed up and everything was going fine. You know, she got on stage, made her introductory statement, and they were quiet until she brought up Donald Trump, which is when the attendees lost their shit.
These town halls, once safe havens for right-wing talking points and applause lines about conservative values, have transformed into charged arenas where voters are demanding accountability, transparency, and most importantly, a return to reality. Ashley Hinson, for example, walked into her district's event with confidence, boasting about voting for a sweeping bill she claimed would benefit the country. She spoke proudly of President Trump, painting him as a savior whose survival in Butler, Pennsylvania, she implied was divine intervention.
So it's nice to see that even in deep red districts like this one, they're already fed up with Donald Trump's bullshit. But what she said there was so bizarre to me. Why would you say something like that? It's almost an insult to the firefighter who died at Trump's rally in Butler. Like, was his life not important to God either? It doesn't make any sense to me. This logic never makes sense. And as you can see, the audience wasn't buying it because they very clearly don't think that Trump is saving the country. Okay? They think he's destroying the country because he is, and they're not too happy with her complicity with his destruction of the country. For example, one attendee asked her about Donald Trump's shameless corruption and why she's not doing anything to rein it in. And as you're going to see, she was deeply offended by a comment that he made when he was asking this question.
But instead of receiving praise, she faced a room of people who had clearly had enough. Her mention of God saving Trump came off not only as politically opportunistic but also deeply insensitive, especially considering the death of a firefighter during the very rally she referenced. If God's hand was in that moment, does it not extend to those who lost their lives? The logic of her statement, like much of the MAGA narrative, collapses under the weight of its own contradictions. Her audience, though from a district that leans heavily red, wasn't interested in rehearsed patriotism or Trump worship. They wanted answers.
You're not answering the question, actually. He asked you specifically about Donald Trump's corruption, which you don't really seem comfortable talking about. He didn't ask you about corrupt members of Congress, and don't get me wrong, that's prevalent as well, but the most corrupt member of Congress pales in comparison to Donald Trump. This is by far the most shamelessly corrupt administration in American history. If we went through all of his scandals, it would take 2 hours. I mean, just recently, there's the meme coin, which operates as a backdoor bribery scheme. There's the private dinners with crypto billionaires. There's the $400 million plane from Qatar. There's the potential pay-to-play for pardons, letting elites buy positions in government, the conflicts of interests regarding his businesses and foreign policy. There's the ad read that he did on the White House lawn for his biggest donor, Elon Musk. I mean, I can't recall any other public official being as openly corrupt as Donald Trump. He is a lifelong con man, and his corruption isn't a priority for you, which is very, very alarming. I think it speaks to your character as well, which is why he said that. But I mean, if you're not making this a priority as a member of Congress, if you really do care about corruption, you're complicit, full stop. But putting aside the corruption, you know, this man is literally destroying our democracy. Like, as bad as the corruption is, I think the long-term damage that he's doing that's irreparable to American democracy is worse than the corruption. And one of her constituents brings this up, and her answer predictably was more indignant bullshit.
One voter bravely questioned why she remains silent on Trump's long and well-documented history of corruption, listing several potential reasons, such as fear, complicity, or personal gain. Hinson, visibly rattled, responded not with specifics, but with indignation. She invoked her recent appointment to the House Ethics Committee as evidence of her integrity, seemingly unaware of the irony that being on an ethics committee doesn't erase a track record of avoiding hard questions. She sidestepped the core issue, Donald Trump's brazen corruption.
I'll translate for you since I speak politician fluently. She is telling you that she thinks Donald Trump is a king, basically. She's seemingly bragging about the hidden provision within the big, beautiful bill that prohibits courts from holding the administration in contempt, making their rulings completely unenforceable. But yet, she's ironically saying that the judges are the ones not following the law as Trump defies court orders, including, by the way, a 9-0 ruling from the Supreme Court, which is not a liberal-leaning court. It is a hyper-conservative court, but every single one of them said he must facilitate the return of Rodrigo Garcia, and he has not complied. So every single word out of her mouth was complete and utter fucking horseshit, and her constituents very clearly were not letting her gaslight them. But on the subject of that provision in Trump's big beautiful bill, Congressman Mike Flood, who represents Nebraska's 1st district, was asked about that same provision at his town hall, and his answer is genuinely mind-blowing to me.
This wasn't about standard congressional misconduct, it was about a former president mired in criminal investigations, financial scandals, and policy decisions that directly benefited his businesses and allies. From meme coin schemes that look like digital bribery, to secret meetings with crypto billionaires, to unexplained gifts like a $400 million airplane from Qatar, Trump's actions stretched the definition of corruption to its limit. His administration blurred the line between private enrichment and public service so thoroughly that the two became indistinguishable.
What? You didn't know about the provision in the bill that you voted for that strips away enforcement power from courts? You just didn't know? And you admitting this makes you look good in your mind, I guess, because you're being honest? Listen, I don't know what would be worse, honestly, if he was really this negligent or if he voted for it because he thinks Trump should be a king, like Hinson does, apparently. I mean, either way, this is disqualifying, to put it mildly. Now, to be fair, he does go on to say that he expressed concerns to senators about this provision and asked them to correct his fuck up. But with that being said, he voted for a bill that is still inexcusable by other metrics, even if he genuinely does disagree with that particular portion of the bill. This legislation steals money from his constituents to give it to the richest Americans in the country. It is a reverse Robin Hood. And when he was asked about the substance of this bill, he had expectedly the most disingenuous answer ever.
And Hinson's refusal to even name these issues speaks volumes about her priorities and allegiances. Another questioner pressed her on constitutional duty, reminding her that members of Congress are supposed to check the power of the executive branch. Why, he asked, wasn't she willing to hold Trump accountable even through impeachment, especially as his administration openly defied court orders, including unanimous rulings from a conservative Supreme Court? Her response again dodged the substance. She claimed the country didn't need another impeachment charade, painting Trump as a victim of partisan warfare instead of a president who actively undermined the judiciary. More shockingly, Hinson appeared to defend a provision in the new bill that blocks federal courts from enforcing contempt orders, essentially gutting judicial authority and elevating the president above the law.
I never thought that I would hear tax the rich being chanted at a Republican town hall, but here we are. But the obvious question is, if we need Medicaid and you support Medicaid, why did you vote to cut it, dipshit? If you actually believed that, you wouldn't have voted to cut Medicaid. And with regard to something he said about EMTALA, I want to give you some additional context there because it shows you how disgusting this individual is. This is the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act signed into law by Ronald Reagan. Now, what it does is it says that Americans who show up to emergency rooms cannot be turned away if they don't have health insurance. Now, that is objectively good, because I think that if you don't have insurance and you get into an accident or you have an injury, yes, you should get treatment for that. But this is not a long-term solution to America's healthcare crisis because you still get charged for healthcare that you can't afford. So even if you get treated, you're still going to go into debt and potentially become bankrupt. And it's effectively turned emergency rooms into makeshift doctor's offices for sick Americans who can't be seen by regular physicians, which is a problem because emergency rooms are supposed to be for emergencies. But if you need treatment and you can't get seen anywhere else, what else are you supposed to do? So the fact that this rich prick who's worth almost $8 million thinks EMTALA is adequate healthcare for the poor's is insulting. Every single person in his district should be outraged that they think just going to the emergency room is sufficient for healthcare. The solution is Medicare for all. Any politician in either party that doesn't support that is complicit with the deaths of 68,000 Americans every single year, period. But, I mean, he clearly doesn't care, and not caring would be bad in and of itself, but it's almost like he has contempt for his constituents since he's voted to fuck them over again and again and again. Like, not caring would almost be better than malicious, because it really feels like these politicians are malicious given how every single thing that they support is genuinely destructive, unless you're rich. But, you know, they've been paying attention, all the people in his district, and the feeling is very clearly mutual. As much as he hates them, they hate him more. And I say this because one constituent used her time to just rip him a new asshole and call him a fascist to his face, and she got a standing ovation because of it. And as you're going to see, his fifis were hurt because she said that.
That means if a judge rules that the executive branch is violating the Constitution, the ruling is powerless. That's not democracy, it's autocracy. And if you think Hinson's answers were bad, Congressman Mike Flood made things worse when asked about the same provision. He admitted he didn't even know that was in the bill when he voted for it. Let that sink in. A U.S. lawmaker voted to weaken the American legal system without understanding what he was approving.
Hell yeah. Credit to that brave woman for speaking truth to power. That is what I think these politicians deserve. If they're going to be fascists, I think that they need to be confronted with the reality of their politics. And what she did there was a public service. But as you saw, he didn't address the substance of her question. And whenever he does address the questions directly, it's just a quick, banal response followed by next question. For example, you know, there was a different town hall that we didn't talk about back in March from the same guy. And a different constituent asked him a really thoughtful question about Doge and Elon Musk's various conflicts of interest. And even though Elon Musk is now out of the picture, you know, this answer that he gave just shows that he has no regard whatsoever for his constituents. So
Classes is pushing more and more Americans to speak out, even in the heart of MAGA territory. These town halls should serve as a warning. The people are watching, they're angry, and they're not afraid to hold their leaders to account, not with partisan spin, but with facts, questions, and a demand for honest leadership. The message is clear: enough is enough.
that is such a load of horseshit. Half of the population of Gaza wasn't even alive when Hamas came to power. But I think that politicians like him, who are complicit with genocide, they tell themselves these pretty little lies so that way they can sleep at night, but it's not going to erase the death and destruction that you support. Furthermore, there's no Hamas in the West Bank, so who's to blame there? What's your excuse now? Does Israel ever share any responsibility? Will you ever address their 75-plus year occupation or their defiance of international law and their war crimes? Well, of course not, because this man is a paid shill. He's paid to lie for a rogue genocidal state. And shame on the audience for applauding him, because that was not a good answer. Even though it works on people who are stupid, that was not a good answer. Now, the audience actually seemed split at this town hall. There was about 50% who was on his side. There was 50% that was like against him. I didn't play more clips from him because the audio was dog shit in every single video that I could find, including that one. But I wanted to at least show you that because that one had subtitles already on it. But, you know, this man was shouted down the entire fucking time at the town hall. But the one time he seemingly got a little bit of applause was because of his genocide apologia, which shows you that, you know, we still have to do more to raise the salience of this issue. But, you know, credit to that woman for standing up and speaking truth to power, because that's what these town halls are about.